Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. 2022 is almost over and I wanted to make a list of the top fights the UFC needs to make in 2023. And when I originally came up with this idea, I wanted to do like a top 5, but then as I started making a list, I ended up with like a top 15. Well, I finally narrowed it down to a top 10 fights that the UFC needs to make in 2023. I also have a couple honorable mentions, and then I kind of have like a bonus matchup which I think is very unlikely to happen, but I actually believe it is the biggest fight the UFC can make in 2023 as far as pay-per-view sales-wise, and it's a fight that absolutely nobody's talking about. I've heard nobody even suggest this fight, but we'll talk about that later in the video. As I go down the list, I'm going to start with the honorable mentions, then I'm going to go from 10 to 1, and 1 being the fight I most want to see in 2023. Not only am I going to talk about each fight, I'm going to give my prediction on whether or not this fight actually happens in 2023. And then at the end of the year next year, I'm going to look back. We're going to see how many of these fights I got right. And some of these fights, even though I really want to see and I really want them to happen, they may be a little bit lower down on the list just because of how unlikely they are to happen next year. I hope that makes sense. But before I even get into any of that, comment down below and let me know your top 5, top 10, whatever, however many fights you can come up with, the fights that you must see in 2023. I'm genuinely curious to hear your opinion. And I'm curious also, if you comment now, how many of those fights end up being on this list before you actually hear my entire top 10. So starting off with the honorable mentions. And this is a great list. Honestly, every single one of these fights is an amazing matchup. But this is an honorable mention. Even though it's an absolute amazing matchup, I think it's very unlikely that it happens in 2023. And that is Rafael Fiziev versus Conor McGregor. Who would not want to see this matchup? I mean, Rafael Fiziev, amazing elite striker, looked unbelievable in his last fight. Conor McGregor, you know, I know he hasn't won a fight since Cowboy Cerrone back in 2020. And he hasn't won a lightweight fight since 2016. It's been 6 years. He just got removed from the lightweight rankings, which is crazy that he was in the lightweight rankings for 6 years after his last win in the division. But Conor McGregor is going to return in 2023, most likely. He's going to have to re-enter the USADA pool, hopefully get off the PEDs. And I know a lot of people are talking about the Michael Chandler matchup, or, you know, a litany of other matchups, a Jorge Masvidal matchup, or basically Conor McGregor versus anyone. But this is the fight that I would love to see. Rafael Fiziev is looking for a big name in his next fight. And we've talked about it countless times. You know, guys like Dustin Poirier, Justin Gaethje, Michael Chandler, they all just want to fight each other. Let's do Rafael Fiziev versus Conor McGregor. That'll be a massive fight. Stylistically, who wouldn't want to see that? Say what you will about Conor McGregor and his no wins in lightweight in the last 6 years. He's one of the most exciting fighters in UFC history, and Rafael Fiziev is amazing. I mean, he's a high-level striker. Conor McGregor's a high-level striker. There's going to be no grappling in this matchup, and even if Fiziev wins, you can build his name. Imagine what a win over Conor McGregor would do, even though Conor McGregor's on a current losing streak. I would absolutely love this matchup, and can you imagine if Conor McGregor returns after a broken leg, and he goes out there, and let's say he puts out Rafael Fiziev. They can put him in a title fight at light heavyweight at that point. That's how big of a win that would be. This could headline a pay-per-view, and it would be an amazing matchup. Moving on to my other honorable mention, I have 2 honorable mentions. And the reason, again, I absolutely love both these fights, but the reason they're honorable mentions is because I don't think they're super likely to happen. The other honorable mention is Khamzat Chimaev versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. I mean, what an amazing fight this would be. Shavkat Rakhmonov is 16-0. Khamzat Chimaev 12-0. Both guys have looked unbelievable. Hardcore fans for the last year or so have been speculating, oh, Khamzat Chimaev versus Shavkat is going to happen in like 2024 for, you know, at UFC 300 for the welterweight title. This is a fight that I would absolutely love to see. I am high on both these guys. I know Khamzat Chimaev missed weight in his last fight, ended up fighting Kevin Holland at a catchweight. Shavkat has a fight coming up against Jeff Neal. But if they can somehow make it work, let's say Shavkat goes out there and starches Jeff Neal. Khamzat Chimaev is looking for an opponent. People are turning down Shavkat. Wonderboy said, you know, I don't want to fight Shavkat. He wrestled back in elementary school. I'm not fighting him. Khamzat Chimaev saying 4 different opponents turn me down. I'll fight anyone, blah, blah, blah. if we get Chimaev versus Rakhmonov in 2023, that if I thought this was likely to happen, this may be number one on my list. That's how big of a fight this is. I would love to see these guys and their skills, to see how they match up against each other. Because it is two guys who for a while there, they were hanging outside the rankings, and it was like both of these guys have a bright future in the welterweight division. Obviously, Khamzat may go up to middleweight, fight at middleweight, calling out Alex Pereira, he's calling out all these different guys. But if the UFC can somehow make this happen, and you never know what's bound to happen. You know, a champion at welterweight can win, tear his ACL, we need an interim title. Shavkat, once he beats Jeff Neal, he's right in that title discussion. Khamzat Chimaev, with his win over Gilbert Burns, the Kevin Holland win meant nothing. He's right up there in title contention. Had he not missed weight and he beat Nate Diaz, and I know that doesn't mean anything, beat Nate Diaz, the Nate Diaz fight was just to keep Khamzat Chimaev, just keep him busy. He had already basically earned a title shot in the UFC's eyes by beating Gilbert Burns back at UFC 273. So Shavkat will be on the verge of a title shot. Khamzat's already on the verge of a title shot. You know, granted, I know the weight miss. I think Khamzat's probably going to have to fight one more fight before he gets a title shot at welterweight, depending on what he decides to do. Book Khamzat Chimaev versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. I'm dying to see this matchup. Would absolutely love to see Chimaev versus Shavkat in 2023, but I don't think it's super likely to happen. Again, that's why it's an honorable mention. Moving on to number 10 on the list. And this is a fight that wouldn't attract a lot of casuals. Honestly, the UFC might throw it on opening up a pay-per-view. It's a non-title fight. It might not even be a number one contender fight in their division. That's how kind of logjam their division is right now. But this would be an amazing matchup. And that is in the featherweight division. I want to see Arnold Allen versus Ilia Topuria. I mean, what an amazing matchup that would be. Topuria just ragdolled Bryce Mitchell and submitted him back at UFC 282. An amazing performance. Dominated him on the feet. Then ended up ragdolling him in the second round, submitting him. Ilia Topuria is undefeated. Arnold Allen only has one loss in his MMA career. He hasn't lost in the UFC. He hasn't lost since all the way back in 2014. He's kind of coming off a questionable injury win over Calvin Kattar, but they're both ranked in the top 10. The division's a little bit logjam because you have Volk moving up to lightweight to fight Islam Makhachev, and then you have Yair versus Emmett, and then you kind of have, you know, Brian Ortega hanging out in the wings, and you have Max Holloway trying to see what happens with Volk, and maybe if Volk, you know, wins at lightweight and stays up there, maybe Max Holloway can reclaim his title. But Topuria versus Arnold Allen, sign me up for this matchup. It would be absolutely amazing. Both these guys are super high level. Both guys are very young. Both guys have looked amazing in all their performances. And I think they're one big win away from potentially fighting for a title, depending on how the division plays out. Obviously, if Volk loses and comes back down, he's going to have to fight the interim champion, which will be Yair or Josh Emmett. But after that, I think the winner of Allen versus Topuria could be the number one contender. So sign me up for this fight. It'd be amazing to watch. Both guys are super well-rounded, but both guys still need that real signature win to get a title shot. Arnold Allen was supposed to get it against Calvin Kattar, but with the injury, you know, you can't really say, okay, he's definitively the number one contender. And Ilia Topuria, I know that was a big win over Bryce Mitchell, but Bryce Mitchell was ranked like number 9 at that point in time. So I think Topuria still needs one big win. And honestly, when I initially made this matchup as number 10, I thought about doing Topuria versus Paddy Pimblett. But then I thought about it. Why do I want to see a high-level fighter like Ilia Topuria fight a trash can from a different division? You know, because Paddy Pimblett's at lightweight, Topuria's at 45. This is a fight that Paddy Pimblett has shown he doesn't want. And honestly, I'd much rather see two known high-level guys within the same weight class fight each other. That's why I want Topuria versus Arnold Allen. Absolutely love this matchup, and I'm dying to see this fight. Moving on to number 9. This is another fight I haven't really seen suggested, you know, very much. And this is in the heavyweight division. This is an absolute amazing matchup. And I suggested this recently on a live stream to maybe happen at that San Antonio card in March, maybe a headliner. And that is Cyril Gane versus Sergey Pavlovich. What an amazing matchup that would be. They're both coming off a win against Tai Tuivasa. Both finished Tai Tuivasa. They're both ranked high, I think both in the top 5 of the heavyweight division. Why not book this fight? Cyril Gane looked very good. His only losses to Francis Ngannou, and it was a competitive fight. He was winning on the feet. Pavlovich has looked unbelievable on the feet. I mean, since his loss to Alistair Overeem, he's just looked unbelievable. Went out there, stopped Tai Tuivasa in the first round. Did it more impressively than Ciryl Gane, but Tai Tuivasa may have returned too early after losing to Ciryl Gane and taking a beating and nasty body shots and a lot of damage. But why not book them up against each other? Because the way the heavyweight division is looking right now, I don't think either one of these guys is going to get a title shot anytime soon. And you look at the rankings right now, you have Pavlovich at number 3, you have Ciryl Gane at number 1. Stipe Miocic retired. He's a fireman basically at this point. I mean, he's not technically retired, but I think he is. So why not book Ciryl Gane versus Sergey Pavlovich? Ciryl Gane's such a technical striker. He's so light on his feet. He has amazing kicks. He has good hands. And Pavlovich has crazy KO power. He looks unbelievable. And it would not shock me if Pavlovich could jump into a title fight right now against Francis Ngannou and go out there and KO Francis Ngannou. That's how good Pavlovich has looked in his recent fights. I mean, the Tai Tuivasa win in the first round. I predicted him to win that fight, first round KO. But the way he did it was so impressive in the first minute. Finished Derek Lewis before that. And I know Ciryl Gane has the same wins, but the heavyweight division is just starting to heat up. So why not book Ciryl Gane versus Sergey Pavlovich? Now, do I think this fight is super likely? Yes, I think this fight happens in 2023. I meant to say for number 10, Topuria versus Allen. I'm also going to predict that that fight does happen in 2023. So moving on to number 8 on my list. And this kind of just popped into my head. I hadn't really thought about this until I started compiling my list. But I want to see in 2023, it'll probably be in late 2023, I want to see Yuri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill. And I don't know how likely this is to happen because Jamal Hill is going to have to get past Glover Teixeira at UFC 283. Then he's probably going to have to fight another fight, if he beats Glover, and defend again against maybe a Magomedov or maybe a Blachowicz, or maybe even a Rakic. Who knows what's liable to happen in the light heavyweight division. We had a light heavyweight title fight on one night, and the same night we had another light heavyweight title fight announced with 2 different fighters. So who knows what's bound to happen. Yuri's an animal. Who knows? He may return in the summer of 2023. So if Jamal Hill can go out there, and let's say he retires old man Glover, who's getting up there in age, I could see a scenario where we see Yuri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill. And what an amazing matchup this would be, because Yuri Prochazka is so reckless, so wild, such an excellent striker, but he's so reckless. And the way he just wades in, hands at his waist, throwing wild strikes, leaves himself susceptible to counters. Jamal Hill so long and powerful, has amazing KO power. I would love to see this matchup. Could you imagine the tension while watching this fight? And I think this is going to be primarily a striking fight. I mean, Yuri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill would be an amazing light heavyweight matchup that I never even realized we needed to see until I recently started thinking about it. Now, do I think this fight's going to happen in 2023? I am going to say no, because even if Jamal Hill gets by Glover, is he going to get by another guy in the summer of 2023 for returning Yuri Prochazka? They're talking about a return at the end of 2023 for Yuri. But if Yuri is able to return earlier in the summer, Jamal Hill may get by Glover and they may fight in the summer of 2023. But right now, my prediction is that this fight does not happen. But man, would I love to see Yuri Prochazka versus Jamal Hill. Would be an absolute amazing matchup. Moving up on the list, and this is a fight that I've been wanting to see for probably like a year now, honestly. And that is Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Chito Vera 2. We need to see this bantamweight matchup. And I've talked about it time and time again. This is a fight that we need to see. And there's so many people that have said, because Marlon Chito Vera recently had a fight announcement, and there's a lot of people who have said, well, why you're not going to match him up right now? They're going to let him fight for a title. There's a chance that Sean O'Malley nor Marlon Chito Vera ever get to a title. So they may have to fight in a non-title fight. And why not fight in a number 1 contender fight? And I know that right now it's looking like they're doing Marlon Vera versus Corey Sandhagen. They've already announced that for next year. And supposedly Sean O'Malley's waiting out for a bantamweight title shot. Whether it's Aljo or it's Henry Cejudo or they fight, obviously the plan right now is Aljamain Sterling versus Henry Cejudo. Winner fights Sean O'Malley later this year, essentially. Or Sean O'Malley fights the winner later this year for the bantamweight title. But I really think we have to see at some point Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Chito Vera 2 after the first fight. And Sean O'Malley and his fanboys have warped this narrative that it was some fluke win for Marlon Chito Vera. He brutally chopped the legs, shucked him to the ground, then flash KO'd him with brutal ground and pound elbows. Then Sean O'Malley was stretchered out of the cage with no serious injury. And he went out and he said, you know what, that was a fluke. I won that fight. I was piecing him up. It was a dead even fight up until the point where Sean O'Malley's leg was compromised. And then he got brutally knocked out and finished on the ground. So I don't consider that a fluke. But Sean O'Malley, I will say this. He is much improved since that first fight. Marlon Vera is much improved since that first fight. They're both ranked, I believe, in the top 5. I think O'Malley's ranked number 1 right now because he got that robbery win over Petr Yan. Chito Vera ranked in the top 5 after that big win over Dominic Cruz. And I know he's fighting Corey Sandhagen. So if he doesn't get by Corey Sandhagen, it's going to be unlikely that this fight happens in 2023. But at some point, we need this rematch. There's too many Sean O'Malley fanboys crying about the first fight. Let's see it again when they're both vastly improved. And stylistically, forget about the first fight. Forget about the whole backstory. This is an amazing matchup. Marlon Chito Vera, unbelievably durable, unbelievable power, unbelievable cardio. Sean O'Malley, even though I thought he lost against Petr Yan, he proves he belongs in the top 10 of the division. Super technical in the feet, has nasty KO power himself. And I would love to see this fight. Super dynamic as well. They match up so well and their styles clash so well. I need to see Marlon Chito Vera versus Sean O'Malley 2 in 2023. But I'm going to predict that this fight does not happen. I hope that it does happen some point down the line. There could be a scenario where maybe Vera loses to Corey Sandhagen, and then maybe O'Malley loses in the summer against Aljo and Cejudo, and then maybe we get the rematch. But as of right now, I'm going to predict that this fight does not happen in 2023. Moving on to number 6 on my list. This is a fight that I've kind of wanted to see for like 2 years now, and that is Petr Yan versus Henry Cejudo. I still believe that in an alternate universe, you can make the argument that Petr Yan is still the bantamweight champion. I know he threw the illegal knee, got DQ'd, lost his belt. The fight against Aljo, the rematch against Aljo was razor close. First round, not a lot happened, then 2 apiece from then on out. You could make the argument that Yan won that fight. And then he loses to Sean O'Malley, brutal robbery, terrible robbery, and that probably would have put him back in position to fight for a title. And I think you had Petr Yan get the title off the back of Henry Cejudo retiring. And as soon as Yan won that title, he beat Jose Aldo. I think it was back at UFC 251 for the vacant belt. I wanted to see Henry Cejudo versus Petr Yan. I wanted to see how they matched up. Henry Cejudo, say what you will about him, super cringy, super forgettable, elite level fighter. Great wrestling. His striking was ever improving. And I just really wanted to see him against Petr Yan. And in my mind right now, and I know some Sterling lovers are going to get absolutely pissed, and some O'Malley lovers are going to get pissed. But in my mind right now, when I rank the bantamweight division in my head, tied for like that number 1 spot is Petr Yan and Henry Cejudo. For me, forget about the belt, forget about everything else. I want to see Petr Yan versus Henry Cejudo. I think they're the 2 best bantamweights in the world. And I would love to see that style clash because Yan has showed excellent grappling. He's one of the best strikers in the entire UFC. Super technical, super durable, unlimited cardio, mixes in the grappling, super well-rounded. Then you have Henry Cejudo, amazing wrestler, great takedowns, fast hands, good kicks, good cardio, very durable in his own right. I would love to see Yan versus Henry Cejudo. Does this happen in 2023? You never know. I'm going to predict that it does not happen in 2023. But I want to see this matchup at some point, whether it's 2024 or not, and I hope that it does happen in 2023. Moving up the list to number 5. This is a fight that, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that it's going to happen at UFC 286. And that is Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3. Again, none of the fights on this list are announced, but some of them are kind of foregone conclusion that they're going to happen. And I am dying to see Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3. Because you had the first fight many, many years ago. Then you have the second fight where Kamaru Usman pretty much dominates Leon Edwards and then gets brutally head kick KO'd in the last minute of the fight. And when you have a dominant champion like Kamaru Usman lose his belt and then he loses it in the fashion that he did, what an amazing trilogy story this is. Can Kamaru Usman go out there and get his belt back? Is he psychologically changed? Kamaru Usman's getting up there in age. Could this be the beginning of the end of Kamaru Usman, that head kick KO from Leon Edwards? And then for Leon Edwards, he knows what happened in that first and second fight. Can he make the adjustments, even though he won the second fight? Can he make the adjustments where he can win a third fight in a much more competitive fashion than he did the second fight. I know that kind of doesn't make sense, but you understand what I'm saying. Can Leon Edwards go out there and stuff the takedowns of Kamaru Usman? Is his cardio going to be a little bit better, because they were at elevation, and he said, that's why my cardio was kind of failing against Kamaru Usman in the second one, even though it didn't completely fail him. And there's so many variables going into this fight. What is Kamaru Usman's mindset after getting brutally KO'd in the 5th round? I mean, that was probably the nastiest KO of 2022. I am dying to see this trilogy. I cannot wait. Can Kamaru Usman get his belt back? Can he take it from Leon Edwards in the trilogy? I am dying to see this matchup. And, it could go either way, honestly, because I want to see what adjustments both guys make in a trilogy. I want to see this fight. It will happen in 2023. It'll happen in March, and it will be at UFC 286 in the UK. Moving down on the list to number 4, this is a fight that I've been talking about for basically a year at this point. I mean, coming up on a year. That is Khamzat Chimaev versus Colby Covington. I am dying to see this matchup. Khamzat Chimaev has talked about Colby Covington for a while. He's been calling him out for a while. And Colby Covington, he's fought Kamaru Usman. He's had close title fights with Kamaru Usman. Doesn't have a lot of quality wins on the resume. And he's kind of holding his top spot ranking, or I guess he's ranked number 2 at this point now because Usman's ranked number 1. But he's kind of been holding his ranking hostage. He fought Jorge Masvidal last March, and since then he's hiding somewhere in a safe house. And, he's just chilling in witness protection since he got punched by Jorge Masvidal, sucker punched. And I know people are saying, well, he can't fight because of the court case. Nobody has ever said that. Nobody said that, not his manager, not Colby, nobody. He's been radio silent. Nobody's ever confirmed that. And you can't tell me just because he's waiting for the legal process to play out that he can't fight at all. He can't make a living. If he had any other job, he can't make a living. I know there is that weird thing where he's claiming brain damage, and he's definitely suing Jorge Masvidal for money. But I think Khamzat Chimaev versus Colby Covington has to happen in 2023. I am dying to see this matchup. After Khamzat missed weight fighting Nate Diaz, he didn't make the 170-pound limit. I think Khamzat needs another win before he gets a title shot at 170. And who better to go out there and face than Colby Covington? And what a stylistically amazing matchup. You have Colby Covington, unbelievable volume, unbelievable pressure, unbelievable wrestling, unbelievable cardio, unbelievable durability. Then you have Khamzat, who just comes out and looks to steamroll you, has great power in his hands. He proved how durable he is in the Gilbert Burns fight. He proved, to so many people, because we watched him just beat up trash can after trash can. I know the Gerald Burchart win aged well, but he proved himself against Gilbert Burns. Close fight, amazing fight. Now let him fight Colby Covington. I want to see, can he take Colby Covington out? Because he comes out and he just looks to absolutely steamroll you. And if he comes out super aggressive, throwing crazy power shots, will the cardio hold up against a guy who's a cardio machine in Colby Covington? And for Khamzat Chimaev, a winner over Colby Covington, guaranteed title shot. If Colby Covington goes out there, beats Khamzat Chimaev, I have no problem, regardless of who's the champion. Colby Covington has earned a title shot. I want to see this matchup. I am dying to see this matchup. And I'm hoping that we get Khamzat Chimaev versus Colby Covington in March, maybe at UFC 285 in Vegas in early March, or maybe even at UFC 286 in the UK on the Kamaru Usman Leon Edwards 3 card. My prediction for this fight, I think it does happen in 2023, and I'm dying to see this welterweight matchup. Moving up to number 3 on the list, and this is another great matchup. Every single fight on this list I am dying to see, and this is a lightweight title fight, and it is Islam Makhachev versus Beneil Dariush. Now, right now, we're looking at UFC 284 in February. Islam Makhachev defending against Alexander Volkanovski. But Beneil Dariush deserves a title shot. We need to give Beneil Dariush his respect. He went out there. He had already borderline earned a title shot. He got injured. He was supposed to fight Islam Makhachev basically in a number 1 contender fight earlier this year. Fell out. He's injured. And people were saying, okay, well, maybe he can wait out for a title shot anyway. Well, he ended up taking a fight against Mateusz Gamrot, and he went out there and looked unbelievably impressive. And what makes this fight so compelling now is he was able to defend most of Gamrot's takedowns and out-scramble Gamrot, keep it on the feet, and win the fight with his striking. Well, what is Islam Makhachev going to come out and try to do? He is going to come out look to take you down, look to hold you down, look to submit you. But Beneil Dariush has unbelievable jiu-jitsu. He has underrated striking, and he has great takedown defense. And even when he does get taken down, he has a great ability to get up, and he has amazing scrambles. Islam Makhachev, and this may be a hot take, but some of you guys may agree with me. Islam Makhachev versus Beneil Dariush is far more intriguing to me than Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski, which is a true super fight, and it's a fight I'm really looking forward to. But you look at the lightweight division, who can beat Islam Makhachev? Beneil Dariush looks like he has the best shot at beating Islam Makhachev. You just look at his skill set, the ability to defend takedowns, the ability to scramble, the ability to get back up, the jiu-jitsu versus Islam Makhachev's unbelievable top pressure, unbelievable wrestling and grappling, unbelievable sambo. I need to see this fight, and this needs to happen in 2023. And I believe that Islam Makhachev versus Beneil Dariush will happen. I hope the UFC just lets Beneil Dariush wait around. If Islam Makhachev defeats Alexander Volkanovski, Beneil Dariush is next in line. Maybe early spring, maybe early fall. We need to see Islam Makhachev versus Beneil Dariush. Moving up on the list to number 2. And this is another fight that's kind of a foregone conclusion. And that is Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya 2. This may have been the first fight at UFC 281. May have been my favorite fight of the year. Super technical. I mean, unbelievable momentum swings. You had Adesanya borderline KOing Alex Pereira at the end of the first round, saved by the bell. And then you have the story of Pereira down on the scorecards, coming back in the 5th round to TKO Israel Adesanya. And I know there's a lot of people saying, well, Pereira has 2 wins over him. That's in a different sport. That's in kickboxing, okay? We're talking MMA. They have 1 fight. Alex Pereira won, 5th round TKO. We need to run it back. It was a highly competitive fight. It was an amazing fight to watch. And these guys are so evenly matched in skills. They're both such elite strikers. If you're not dying to see this rematch, I don't think you're an MMA fan. I think you just hate Israel Adesanya, honestly, because I am dying to see this rematch. Both guys so technical on the feet. This is a fight where you make one mistake and next thing you know, you were brutally KO'd. And I know technically Adesanya, he got standing TKO'd in the first fight at UFC 281. But what an amazing moment. What an amazing fight. What an amazing overall performance by Alex Pereira. To know that he's down on the scorecards and to come out in that 5th round. And, that moment of him standing right before the referee says, let's fight. And the look on his face and the fact that he came out with a sense of urgency. He goes out there and dethrones a champion in Israel Adesanya, who had been the champion for many years, defended the belt quite a few times, to go out there losing, knowing he's losing, and gets a 5th round stoppage. And then on top of that, you have the backstory of the history in kickboxing. Does Pereira have Israel Adesanya's number? This is a fight that I need to see ran back. I know some people are talking about maybe Khamzat Chimaev should fight Alex Pereira. Absolutely not. That's a fight I want to see one day. We need to see Pereira versus Adesanya 2, and we need to see it in 2023. And my prediction, I believe this fight will happen in 2023, and I am absolutely dying to see it. I cannot wait. I mean, just the leg kicking battle between these two guys was phenomenal to watch at UFC 281. I need to see this fight ran back. I wouldn't care if they fought 5 times. They're such elite strikers. I'm dying to see this fight. Moving on to number 1 on the list, and I'm wondering how many of you guys who watch the channel regularly could guess this fight. But this is a fight that I've been talking about. This was actually on last year's list. I wanted to see this fight in 2022. And the number 1 fight I need to see in 2023 is Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones. I need to see this fight. I am dying to see this fight. You have Francis Ngannou, who's an unbelievable freak of nature, unbelievable KO power. And he looked so good in his last fight against Ciryl Gane. And I understand he lost a lot of the striking exchanges. But the fact that he came in injured, he had knee injuries, came in injured, lost the first 2 rounds, comes back, switches up the game plan to wrestling and grappling, wins the last 3 rounds, retains his title, all while fighting out his last fight on his contract. What an amazing performance. And I just can't be any more complimentary of Francis Ngannou. I cannot believe what he did back at UFC 270, January of last year. And before that, I know a lot of people, kind of trash Francis Ngannou and say, oh, he wants to go boxing and this and that. I don't particularly want to go see him go boxing. I think the UFC can re-sign him. I think they can figure it out. It's time. We need to see Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones for the heavyweight title. Francis Ngannou before that, I think it's 6 first-round KOs, or actually, it's a second-round KO versus Stipe Miocic, first-round KO versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik, first-round KO versus Junior Dos Santos, first-round KO versus Cain Velasquez, first-round KO versus Curtis Blades. This guy's a freak of nature, has unbelievable power. Then you have Jon Jones, the consensus light heavyweight GOAT. I know the last fight against Dominic Reyes was questionable, but Jon Jones has sat out for damn near 3 years at this point. And he's supposedly been bulking up for heavyweight. He's been talking about heavyweight since like 2014. It's unbelievable how long Jon Jones has talked about moving up to heavyweight. We need to see this fight. I cannot imagine the tension in the air, the tension in the arena, the tension while I'm sitting in front of this camera, live streaming, watching the fights, watching Francis Ngannou stare across from Jon Jones, the consensus light heavyweight GOAT. It would be unbelievable. Jon Jones, he always rises to the occasion. I know he didn't look good against Dominic Reyes. Everyone expected him to beat him. I know he didn't look that good against Thiago Santos. Everyone expected him to beat him. I know he didn't look, he did look good, but a lot of people thought he lost against Alexander Gustafsson in the first fight. A lot of people expected him to beat him. But when he has these tough challenges, when he has the biggest fights of his career, Gustafsson too, went out there and basically dominated him. both DC fights. I think he 50-45'd him the first time, and then he finished him the second time. I know you have the PED allegations, or not even the allegations, the PED popping positive through USADA. I know you have that asterisk next to Jon Jones' career, but to see him against Francis Ngannou, what an amazing matchup this would be, because imagine this. Francis Ngannou has the most unbelievable nuclear power that we may have ever seen in the UFC. And if he catches Jon Jones on the chin, he is putting him to sleep most likely. I can't imagine. Jon Jones is undefeated. I know he has the loss to Matt Hamill for the illegal downward elbows. It's basically meaningless. I know he has the questionable win to Dominic Reyes. At the end of the day, he got the win. Was it questionable? Yes. But to see him potentially get put out by a guy like Francis Ngannou would be unbelievable. And if Jon Jones goes out there and he beats Francis and wins the heavyweight title to become a double champion in the UFC, I know he's not a consecutive double champion, but you get what I mean. In the history of the UFC, a 2-time champion in 2 different weight classes would be unbelievable. And Jon Jones' skills and his well-rounded ability and his ability to rise to the occasion, I need to see him versus Francis Ngannou. I need to see this fight. The tension would be unbelievable. The stylistic clash. Francis Ngannou just mixing in the grappling like he did against Cyril Gane. Can he take Jon Jones down? Is Jon Jones going to be able to take him down? Francis is just a freak of nature. This fight just screams. This has to be my number 1 fight. I am dying to see this matchup. I want to see this matchup, and I believe this fight will happen in 2023. I believe this fight will happen early March in Las Vegas, UFC 285. You heard it here first. Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones. I believe it will happen in 2023, and I'm dying to see this matchup. And I hope Jon Jones finally returns. I hope he doesn't get any trouble before the fight and somehow pull out because he got arrested for something. I am praying to the MMA gods. We need to see Francis versus Jones in 2023. Let me know what you guys think about number 1. But before I go, I have a bonus matchup that I wanted to talk about in this video that I think is highly unlikely to happen, but it would be the biggest fight the UFC can make. Because I think Francis Ngannou versus Jon Jones is one of the biggest fights the UFC can make right now. But there's a fight that I believe will be bigger. And that is Conor McGregor versus Islam Makhachev. If Conor McGregor comes back in 2023, and I know people are saying he might hang out at welterweight, whatever. If he fights at lightweight and he gets one quality win, let's say he fights Michael Chandler, gets a win over Michael Chandler, they're putting Conor McGregor versus Islam Makhachev together. That would be a massive fight, and I think it would probably surpass the buy rate for Conor McGregor versus Khabib Nurmagomedov. I think that's how big it would be. You would have an amazing backstory of Khabib retires. Conor always wanted that one back. He begged for that rematch. He wanted that fight badly. Khabib never gave it to him. And now you have Khabib's protege in Islam Makhachev, who he coaches. He would be in the corner for. And if Conor McGregor can get one win in the lightweight division, the UFC books Conor McGregor, Islam Makhachev. I think it would do crazy buys. I think it would be an insane amount of pay-per-view sales for that fight. I think there would be an insane amount of hype. And I think the UFC would look at the dollar signs. They'd be like, we have to make this fight. If you remember, Dana White had Khabib Nurmagomedov at the second Conor McGregor-Dustin Poirier fight, the one where Conor McGregor got knocked out. And it's because, and there was a video of him like whispering over to Khabib, you know how much money this rematch is going to do? The UFC is never going to get Khabib back. But what's the next best thing? That is Islam Makhachev. And I believe if Conor McGregor gets one win in the lightweight division in 2023, I think the UFC may book him up with Islam Makhachev. That'd be a massive money fight. Do I think it happens in 2023? Probably not, because I think Conor probably won't return until maybe summer or fall of 2023. And depending on who they match him up with, I'm not even sure he's going to get a win. I wouldn't be confident to pick him over even Michael Chandler or anyone else in the division for that matter. So I don't think necessarily it's going to happen, but if it does, that's a massive fight and probably the biggest pay-per-view the UFC's done in the past few years. So let me know what you guys think about my entire list. Did I miss any fights? Were they out of order? Should they have been a little bit different? Let me know what you guys think. Do me a favor, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.